Okay, I'm going to go ahead and open the interview questions. Okay, and then we will just rotate it onto Abby. Okay, the first question, Abby, is if you were given $200,000 every year for the rest of your life, but had to agree not to work or invest the money, would you take the sum, and why?
I think I would take the sum because I think there's a lot of things that you can do with your time if you don't have to worry about money. $200,000 is obviously plenty of money to live on. And I love teaching and I love that career path, but I just think of like all the opportunities I would have with the experiences I've had as even just a pre-service teacher and all of the education that I've received, how I could put that into practice without any concern of money. I think in some ways would allow me to make decisions uninhibited and make decisions that are not concerned about myself, but they could be truly concerned about like the people and how I could best help people around me. I would like to spend a lot of time. I've spent some time at BYU volunteering with Special Olympics, and I've spent time at BYU volunteering at a school for high-functioning autistic adults. And I've loved the time I've spent there. And I would love to spend all of my time there, but there's logistics of I have to have a job and I have to work. But if I could like throw myself into those type of works without any concerns of like logistics, then I would gladly take that opportunity. So I would take the $200,000.
Okay, here's your second question. And you get to look at this one. So this is a logic problem. Remove 3 matches from the 5 squares so as to leave only 3 of the squares. No excess matches should remain.
Should I mark it on here? I think so.
Maybe you can practice on that one and then do it on this one. feel good about that?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, so the third question that you get to answer is name a conflict or moral dilemma faced by a character in a pre-20th century novel that would parallel a serious ethical question of our time.
Okay.
And then explain how you feel students would respond to this particular dilemma.
So it's name a conflict or moral.
A conflict or moral dilemma faced by a character in a pre-20th century novel.
Okay. Okay, so I was thinking of Elizabeth Bennet. She, there's the love triangle with not love triangle. There's the love interest with Mr. Darcy, but she has a different love interest. There's a different man who's in love with her, but she knows that he's not a eligible suitor, but then her best friend decides to marry him for the money. And I think that would be an interesting conflict to talk about in class because I found that students are really quick to talk about love. It's something like dating's really interesting to them, and romance is the most popular novel forever. And I think they would be really interested in that story because there's lots of drama in high school. And I think when I was reading Pride and Prejudice, that story was so interesting to me because I knew my best friend was dating someone who I didn't think was right for her. And I thought it was a moment where I realized that literature is something that lasts forever. And these stories that are pertinent pre-20th century are also pertinent to us right now and pertinent to high schoolers. And I think that's something that can be really difficult for high schoolers to understand sometimes, that these really complex novels with these really difficult words and difficult symbolism can be relevant to them and can be important to them. And so I think that's something that I've always tried to do in my teaching, is show how something that was written a long time ago is still relevant now. And I think one of the easiest ways to do that is throw in a love story, and students can grab onto that pretty quickly and pretty easily because high school drama is going on all the time, and it's not that difficult to see how it's relevant to them.
Okay. Next question. If you could add one literary work, so it could be an essay, an article, a memoir, a poem, or a novel, to the traditional high school English curriculum, what would that work be, and what gap would it fill?
That's a good question. I would choose Long Way Down by Jason Reynolds. I think poetry is absolutely beautiful, but I think it's something that students have a really hard time understanding and even appreciating. I've used some pretty basic poetry, I felt like, in my student teaching, and a lot of the responses were from students just saying how they don't like poetry and how they don't give it a chance. But I think Jason Reynolds' Long Way Down would be an awesome way to counter that because he uses slang in his novel, and he does a really nice job of showing the aesthetic of poetry as well. And there, you'll turn pages and there's just one word on there, and it's really powerful. And so I think it would fill this gap of poetry that's difficult for students to understand because of the language, so that we could focus more on the aesthetic beauty and the symbolism. I also like Long Way Down because it's a really fast read, and it could help struggling readers feel confident that they finished a novel, which I don't think we appreciate enough in teaching, that students need to gain confidence in their ability to read, and that happens when students can say they finished a novel. And so I think it would do a nice job checking that off. But at the same time, it's not just something that's easy. It's not something just that's like just reading Magic Tree House or Captain Underpants. It's not those type of novels that they can read, but it's something that's poetic and it's beautiful. It's very symbolic and very moving, so that they can have a taste of something that's literary as well. I also would choose Jason Reynolds because I think he is, I don't think we have enough Black authors included in the canon, especially in our high school classes. I remember when I came to college trying to think of a single Black author I read, and the only one I could think of was Chinua Achebe. And I think that's awful because there's a lot of beautiful works written by Black authors, and so I think this would be a nice way to include some diversity, include poetry, include something literary, but also something that's like a high interest novel to the students, so that they can be engaged and that they can gain confidence that this is that they read something that was important.
All right, number 5 is, as a future English teacher or current student teacher, how do you envision your teaching style, and how does this approach meet the developmental needs of students with diverse learning styles?
Something that has been really important to me as I've started teaching is trying to find ways to connect with students on an individual level. I pride myself on having a lot of different interests. I love books, I love movies, I love sports, I love theater, I love food, I love working out. Like, I love a lot of different things, and I've found as I've talked to students and I've asked them what they like to do, that they've been able to tell me about some of the after-schools activities they do, and they can talk about their swimming, and they can talk about football, and they can talk about a movie they just saw. And as I connect with my students individually, it creates this culture in my classroom where we are able to talk with each other. And I found that as I talk to them one-on-one and I connect with them, when I go up in class and I ask them to share their writer's notebook or to share their thoughts on something we just read, that they're a lot more willing to do so because we've developed a trust between each other. So that's something that's been really important to me. Something else that's been important to me is that I emphasize learning over my students' grades. Sometimes it can be a little overwhelming because I have a lot of redos being turned in, but I decided pretty early on that it's most important to me that my students are prepared for whatever step is next in their life. So if that's working or going to a technical college or going to a university, I want them to have the confidence that to do so, and especially in their writing. So giving students second chances and opportunities to revise has been really important to me because the most important thing in my classroom is that my students are learning, and that doesn't always happen on the first try because learning isn't a linear process.
All right, final question. If you could choose one career path other than teaching, what would it be and why?
I would choose a sideline broadcaster at college football games. I love college football, and I love college game day. I always wake up for it every single Saturday, and I've always thought that's my dream job if I wasn't teaching. But something else I really like about it is that the sideline reporters are often the people getting the real story. They're the one chasing after the coach at the end of the game, asking them what they're going to change, or finding out what happened to an injured player, or reporting on a story where an athlete provided some humanitarian work or something. And I just think sharing people's stories is so important. And I think being able to do that in a sports world would be a dream come true for me. And so I think that would be my dream job if I couldn't teach.
All right, that's it.